In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, as promised, James, Leif, and I, we are going to talk about what the Philadelphia 76ers should do with the third pick. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. And in this case, it could be your second listen of the day. In the earlier episode, we talked about should players stay in the draft or go back to school. And a few players have big decisions to make. And some of those decisions have probably trickled in since we recorded. But you don't want to miss that one. We talk about Yaxel Lindenborg. We talked about Alex Condon deciding to return to school, but also talked about the big decisions for Tahad Pettiford, Miles Bird, and more. But in this episode, we're going to talk about what the Philadelphia 76ers should do with the number 3 pick. But before we get started, I just want to let you know that if you are not subscribed to the Locked On NBA Big Board YouTube channel, you're missing out. So please subscribe, like, share, comment, and click the bell so you can be notified every time we drop an episode. We're coming at you at least 5 days a week. And every once in a while, you might get a big debate like this. All right, so let's get started. I have Ace Bailey going number 3 to the Philadelphia 76ers in my latest mock. It was my mock draft that I dropped hours after the lottery results were in. But I'm not so sure if that is the right choice. I am leaning towards Tre Johnson, and I'll explain why. So I'm just going to go down. I'm going to ask James. I'm going to ask Leif who they have at number 3 right now and why, and then let the debate begin. So we'll start with you, James. Who do you have the Philadelphia 76ers taking with their third pick in the 2025 NBA draft?
With the third pick in the 2025 NBA draft, I have the Philadelphia 76ers taking Ace Bailey out of Rutgers. Because I think that while I think Tre Johnson is a better shooter, I think Tre is a better passer. He might be just a better basketball player. It's funny, Rob. We had this conversation in January, and people thought I was crazy when I said, yo, what does he do better besides be taller? And comes to find out, Ace really isn't that much taller. But with that being said, I'm going to go Ace Bailey. And we'll say in shoes, he's about 6'9" and a 7-foot wingspan. And I think in this situation for him, it's almost a seamless fit as far as what Philly has currently constructed, and also looking at their roster and trying to figure out who they got coming back. And I think that because of the defensive upside, I'm going to lean towards Ace in this particular spot.
All right, Leif?
I am with James. I think Tre Johnson's a better shooter. I think Tre Johnson's better with the ball. I think Tre Johnson can be a 25-point per game scorer, but Ace Bailey is the pick I expect to happen because I think Philadelphia is the best landing spot for Ace, and his upside is hinging upon the fact he's taller, and there's a little bit more untapped raw potential in the sense that his body still feels young, whereas though Tre Johnson's slender, he feels fully developed. Ace seems like you can put some muscle on him, and that adds some twitch. And I know if you're not like a quick guy to begin with, you're not going to be a first-step blow-by guy, but you can get a little bit better. You get a little more space, score the ball. And then the other reason I believe in this pick is the tutelage of Paul George is important to me in this. And this is assuming no Tre, because there's no better landing spot for a guy to be groomed under a guy who physically resembles him, has a lot of similar skills, probably is even a better athlete, but can hone in his older age, teach him the tricks of the trade. And I think you believe in size there because you have Jared McCain and Tyrese Maxey, who are both fairly diminutive for their respective positions. So I think Ace Bailey is a less polished basketball player, maybe has slightly more potential, but I don't think it's as vast, as disparate as many people lead you to believe. And in my latest big board, I have Tre Johnson as 3A and Ace Bailey at 3B, or Tre at 3 and Ace at 4. But I do think Ace is going to be the pick at 3.
So who are you taking? You're Daryl Morey. Who are you taking?
I'd take Ace. I'd take Ace in the sense that though I'm typically best player available, I just don't know how you build a team with Tyrese Maxey Jared McCain and Tre Johnson all holding the ball and all playing as more natural two guards. Like I think Tre Johnson's the most naturally inclined point guard of that trio, but he's the youngest, so he'd have the least repetitions to do so. So I just think that's too redundant. And if there's not much of a difference between the 3A, 3B, I think you go for the bigger player under the tutelage of one of the best wings of the generation.
So if it were up to me, even though my last mock I had them going with Ace Bailey, but I changed my mind probably a week later. I'm going with Tre Johnson, and it's not even a debate. Tre Johnson is the better shooter. Tre Johnson is the better passer. And we thought the height was going to be the big difference. But according to the measurements, Tre Johnson measured out at 6'6" at the combine. Ace was 6'8.75 barefoot. So it's not that big of a difference. And with Philly, based off of just some of the information that I've heard from other teams and just people that have worked with Daryl Morey, they don't think that he's going to be patient. He wants to win now. And so with Embiid on borrowed time and with Paul George coming off an injury, I think they're going to go with the player that is young, but also the most ready to contribute. I think with Tre, again, the passing is very underrated. The guy shot 39% from three on 6 attempts per game, heavily contested attempts per game. He did not have a great point guard setting him up. So if you put him in a situation where he's getting open catch and shoot jumpers off a double, he's going to be automatic. And so with that being said, even if you just look at the context, Tre Johnson did not have a great team around him at Texas. I don't know if anybody on that team is going to put on an NBA uniform anytime soon. And he was in the SEC, which is historically, based off numbers, the best conference ever in college basketball history. He led them to, I guess, the first 4, but they were in the mix to go to the NCAA tournament. He led the SEC in scoring as a freshman. Again, 39% from three on 6 attempts per game without a shot creator getting him shots. Imagine what he's going to look like and how well he's going to shoot if he's the 4th option on a team. Pick your poison. Who are you going to help off of? And with Philly, you need to win now. You can't say, hey, we're going to wait 2 years for Ace to possibly be Ace, because Paul George is going to be, 37, 38? Who knows what's going to happen with Embiid? Yeah. Philly has to be in win now mode, especially with Boston expected to be down next year. And with all the parity in the NBA, you got to maximize the window of Embiid and George who are on borrowed time. You got to surround them with somebody who's more ready to contribute right away. So that's why I'm going with Tre Johnson.
I don't disagree with a lot of what you said, but I still think Ace Bailey is ready to contribute right away. Because if he, in this situation with Paul George and Embiid and Maxey and Jared McCain, he's not doing any of that stuff that we don't like. There's not going to be any isolations on the elbow. There's not going to be any isolations on the logo with him. There's no space for all that. He's going to be standing in the corner. He's going to make shots. He's going to get out in transition. He's going to have all those same open looks that
he shot 25% on uncontested threes this year.
I don't think that. I think he's a better shooter than the number. I'm not saying he's a better shooter than Tre Johnson, but I think he's a better shooter than the numbers are going to say. I think in that role with those veterans, I think he will be able to contribute. And again, he'll be 6'8". He's going to rebound some. He's going to be able to provide some weak side shot blocking. And I think he should be able to guard those guys that you don't want Paul George at, however, 35, 36, you won't want Paul George on those guys. I just feel like at 6'8", 6'9", with his length and his athleticism, yeah, he needs some more bricks in his back pocket, but he has the tools to be able to contribute right now, especially for a team like Philadelphia. I feel like that's the best spot for him. Anywhere else is where it gets scary for me, because I'm thinking he's going to have an opportunity to use some of what I think are some of his bad habits. Whereas in Philly, they're going to be like, hey, Nick Nurse, they're going to say, hey, man, take the open shots, make the open shots, play off of these guys. Your job is going to be easier than it's ever been in your entire life.
All right, up next, we are going to continue this debate. Leif is up for his second round of comments on this debate between Ace Bailey, Tre Johnson, and maybe even VJ Edgecombe. NBA fans, you know exactly what time it is, and the playoffs means big performances and even bigger rewards. And DoorDash is bringing the heat with a slam dunk deal for Dash Pass members during the 2025 NBA playoffs. It is called If They Swoosh, You Score. And anytime a player drops 50 or more points in a playoff game, Dash Pass members will score a free 3-piece crispy tenders combo from Wingstop the very next day. All you have to do is place an order of $20 or more. Use the code WINGSTOP50 at checkout, and that combo is yours. A crispy, delicious, and totally free 3-piece crispy tenders combo from Wingstop. The offer is valid from noon until midnight the day after the game, and terms apply. So here is the play. Sign up for Dash Pass to unlock this and more exclusive deals. You got to use the code WINGSTOP50. That is Dash Pass. Your door to more savings, more flavor, and more ways to win. Terms apply. All right, second segment. I've made my little spiel about why I think Philly should take Tre Johnson. James added his. Leif, is there anything else that you want to add in favor of Ace Bailey being the pick? Because I'm still not convinced.
See, I think that Ace has the possibility of playing 30 minutes for that Philly team, whereas Tre, you're envisioning that he's playing right away. And I don't know if he does play right away if you've got the trio. And I'm saying playing right away in terms of scoring, charting 30 minutes or so, 25, 30 minutes, because I think you play McCain. I don't think you can play McCain and Tre Johnson. They're both defensively inept. And that's where Ace has an immediate plug-and-play ability here that I think matters, because you talked about patience, right? They don't have any patience. They're wearing thin on patience. Paul George is 35, and you're looking at this team and you say, okay, Embiid on borrowed time. You're not going to play a team that has a 6'1 guard in McCain, a 6'2 guard in Maxey, neither of whom are particularly adept defensively, and then bringing a 19-year-old who, though I think he was lackadaisical because he carried an enormous weight at Texas, you're not going to play any of them together. You can play two at most next to Paul George, who has been a great defender in his career, but is not right now. So I think Ace Bailey has more utilitarian, like you're going to see what he can do, and it's going to help for the betterment of the team immediately. Though I think Tre Johnson is a more polished player and a better shooter. I think you're not losing too much of that shooting ability. And I told you, I thought Tre's the best shooter in this class outside of Kobe Bryant. I think Ace is a top 5 shooter, even though he shot 25% uncontested. I think he's just shot those shots out of rhythm. You're not used to being left open in his career. He's going to get used to that, knockdown shots. And like you said, secondary rim protection is really important to this team. So I think the plug and play ability and their unique situation of drafting 3 while being win now favors Ace Bailey. But if they were wanting to bank on 2 years of development, which most people say favors Ace Bailey, I think that pick becomes a little bit of a different discussion, because you can choose who to prioritize between Tre Johnson, Jared McCain, and Tyrese Maxey. And I think that becomes closer to leaning towards Tre Johnson. But I wonder if they go with VJ erroneously. I would say it's a horrible mistake, but like he's got the most traits that are most reminiscent to what Daryl Morey has done in draft picks.
I disagree. But here's why I still would go with Tre. Again, I think he's a better passer than Ace Bailey. And if Tyrese is, if you don't think Tyrese is a natural point, and you don't think Jared McCain is a natural playmaker, one of them is probably going to come off the bench. So if you have Tyrese and you have Tre Johnson at the 2, and you bring Jared McCain as your spark plug, or you got to add Quentin Grimes to that mix, I think Tre with his size gives them size at the guard spot. Also, here's a question for you. This may sound crazy, and I know people may think I'm crazy, but who cares what people think? In a fair system, in a fair, open training camp tryout, does Ace Bailey beat out Justin Edwards? Now think about this. Justin Edwards, yes, Philly was bad at the end of the year, so the numbers may be a little bit inflated. But Justin Edwards averaged 10 points a game, 3 rebounds, shot 45% from the floor. As a starter, Over 26 games, he shot 45% from the floor, 38% from three on 5 attempts per game, 12 points, 3.8 rebounds. And I know like Leif was not the biggest Justin Edwards guy. James wasn't either. On one hand, yes, he exceeded expectations based off of him not being drafted. He exceeded expectations with his play this year, but I think he played like you would have expected him to play if he didn't have such a up and down freshman year at Kentucky. So with that being said, in a fair and open tryout at training camp, does Ace Bailey beat out Justin Edwards? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think he does. I don't think it's particularly close because, again, better measurements, Ace Bailey. If Ace Bailey shoots 36, Ace Bailey can shoot 36% from three. He's going to give you the same rebounding numbers. And again, we're going to
He didn't shoot it in college though. Like you're expecting him to shoot that.
But Justin Edwards for the majority of his freshman year at Kentucky didn't shoot the ball well either. So it's like I'm not trying to kick down Justin Edwards, but like you got to throw out the last like 3 months of the Philadelphia season because who knows, like, you know what I'm saying? Like those guys got ultimate rhythm. I mean, shout out to Quentin Grimes, but like Quentin Grimes was a max player at the end of the year for Philly. And he basically, I can't foresee them being able to afford him in Philadelphia next year because he did play so well. Whether or not you think it was fake or not, he played extremely well. But I feel like Ace Bailey can do exactly those same things in the same role. And again, I get what you're saying to a different point as far as like the playmaking, but Philadelphia, if Tyrese is a good enough playmaker, not a great playmaker, but good enough playmaker. Paul George is a good enough playmaker. McCain is a good enough playmaker. And then you have Embiid, when he does play, is a good enough playmaker. You need play finishers around that. And I think Ace can be a play finisher. I think he can do exactly what Justin Edwards does. And what they play, like 12 games together? So it's like, do we really know what Justin Edwards looks like next to those guys? But they weren't because they weren't healthy, is what I'm trying to say.
So one of the things that I've heard consistently about Ace is, does he process the game fast enough? So with that being said, as a rookie, do you think he'll be able to process the game fast enough to play for Nick Nurse, who's going to be hard on him, and contribute? Because Philly has to go all in on winning.
Philly has to go in on winning, but processing the game for Ace does not look the same as it did his senior year of high school and his last year at Rutgers, because in this situation, I need you to be a play finisher. I don't need you to hold the ball and make a decision because we have Embiid. Embiid is going to occupy all of Ace's favorite spots when Embiid plays. Then when Embiid doesn't play, it's going to be high pick and roll because Tyrese Maxey is almost unguardable. So it's like, I don't need him to be a high process guy right now. I need you to be a play finisher and complement those other guys when they're there. And you can work on those things, but at the same time, it's like, I don't think I don't really like the word high process. I don't think he needs to be in that role. And if he's picked at 3, he won't be in that role where he has to make decisions. I always envisioned him as a Michael Porter Jr. type guy. And in this situation, he will be a Michael Porter Jr. type guy because it's going to be score off of action, make open shots, help on the glass.
So who is Tre's comparison if Ace is Michael Porter Jr.?
Some people can say
no, not some people. I want to hear your comparison.
I don't really have a
Ace
comparison.
Is Michael Porter Jr.
But if you told me Tre Johnson was a Tyler Hero type player, then I'd be okay with it. But again, what is Tyler Hero as your third option was good, but they still picked on him on defense. Tre may have defensive issues. He's going to have to get better, but should be the shooting, the playmaking eventually should be there. But if you switch, since you want to throw the comparisons out, if you switch, who's more important to this team, Philadelphia? Do you need a Tyler Hero type or do you need a Michael Porter Jr. type with better defense, allegedly?
I would take Tyler Hero.
As usual, I'm right there with James, but I got a comp for you guys. And I think I think this is going to be a cop. I said this to Rafael off camera, and I've mentioned this on different podcasts before. So I don't think he can do what he wants to do and what he's best at in Philly. So Tre Johnson in Philly, I think, is being handcuffed, whereas Ace can thrive in that role. If Tre Johnson gets his way and he's the guy on a team, perhaps for my Utah Jazz, and he can be the best player on the team, I can see him playing point guard in the NBA, even though he's a two guard by nature. And because he's such a scoring threat and he's so talented with the ball in his hands, he can score. There's better spacing in the NBA. You create someone who's a lob threat, and as well as having spacing, he can score in all three levels and shoot the ball lights out if he's ever off the ball. I can see him having a different game style in terms of mannerisms and way that they score. But SGA is not a point guard. He's a point guard on the Thunder because he's such a critical scorer and he draws so much attention. He can then distribute. I'm not saying he's going to win MVP. I'm not saying that, but I think he can be an all-star 25 point per game scorer in that ilk. And then one, if he is off the ball that I think is decent, is Bradley Beal. Like, you put him off the ball and you have a point guard that's better than him. Like when he was with John Wall, Bradley Beal was able to score 30 at one point. That was without Wall. But then when Wall was there, he's the second option. He came off pin downs and knocked down shots. Like Tre Johnson off pin downs is the best shooter in the draft outside of Kobe Bryant. And he can score 20 a game that way or 25 a game with the ball in his hands, a little less efficiency. And you see what he did at Texas on an NBA scale. Philadelphia doesn't allow him to do that whatsoever.
But I think Tre can shoot. I think he can play off the ball. I think what he does off the ball is just as underrated as his passing. Like, I think he's kind of been put into this box as this bucket getter. Yes, he can get buckets, but he can also pass, and he's a lights out shooter, like you said. And I don't think that he's going to. I think his transition would be easier than Ace's. I think if you give Tre an open jumper, he's going to shoot it. I think if you give Ace an open jumper, he's going to pivot. He's going to hold the ball, and he's going to take a even tougher shot. So that's why I think Tre's transition would be a lot easier. Right. I think we kind of got to reprogram Ace.
You do, but at the same time, Ace in high school, he was reprogrammed some. I mean, he didn't get all the correct firmware. He's still some updates. He's got, sitting in the app store, but he did make changes when he did get to Rutgers. Some changes. And then
what are the changes he made?
For one, at a certain point in the season, I want to say conference play, he started to become a better playmaker. He was almost a zero playmaker early on. And then he got better as the season got on as a playmaker. Again, he's got a ways to go. And you started to see him put the ball in the basket, put the ball on the ground, and go to the basket. He got better. He has a ways to go. But let me flip it on you, Ralph. Since we in the last episode, and you were like, if you are so-and-so's representation, so you are Tre Johnson's agent. Yeah. Philly calls you to work out. Are you going to the workout? No. Do you want to put your client in Utah with the greenest of green lights, or do you want him to go to Philadelphia?
No offense to you, Leif, but I am going to Philly. I'm going to Philly. Here's why. Because I know that my guy is going to be able to knock down open shots. I know that he's going to knock down open shots. I know that the East is wide open next year. If Giannis moves west, and
Giannis would be crazy to move west, but I get it. Go ahead.
If he does, and if Giannis moves west, and then you have Boston is going to be without Tatum, and then they're going to have to move some of their guys because their tax bill is going to be like $500 million. And if I'm Philly with the parity in today's league, I'm thinking like, all right, we have a chance. We just need to play Embiid 45 games.
But
no back to back.
But
what I'm saying is, I think with Tre shooting, he can contribute and give them the floor spacing that they need, an additional ball handler, an additional passer that he can help them. So I'm going to the workout. I'm telling Tre, hey man, wear a suit and tie, carry your briefcase with the playbook in there. Because I don't think Ace is going to do the same thing. I'm just trying to think of ways to, create separation.
Man, bring an iPad, man. It's 25, dog.
Create separation and say, this is how I can help you. Right now, your backcourt is small. You need size in the backcourt. I'm a 2, and you got a 6'6" 2 guard.
All right, so we can discuss this in the next segment.
All right, last segment. James has a question that he wants to ask me.
So you can, and I'm looking at Philly's roster, right? I'm assuming Quentin Grimes is gone. I had tweeted out he has a phantom in the car. He's just waiting for that check to go through.
Who's gonna pay him if Philly doesn't?
Man,
Because I heard the Mavs only offered him like $4 million a year or something like that. He's gonna get a lot more than that.
He's gonna get a lot more, but I mean, I'd have to look. This is not the Quentin Grimes podcast, but let's say that Kelly Oubre, who's been on some 1-year deals, it seems like for the past 4 or 5 years, nobody wants to dedicate big money to him. He's still in the books for next year. If you say, you know what, we can address this small backcourt and go big at times, you can roll out Tyrese Maxey at the 1. You can. I sound like Gilbert Arenas. You can go Maxey at the 1. You can go Ace at the 2, or whatever position it is. 2, 3, 4. You could play Ace, Oubre, and Paul George, and Embiid at the 5. That is a lot of length, and then
but not enough ball handling.
But you got 3 ball handlers out there.
Who? Tyrese,
Paul George, and Embiid. Embiid is going to command a double. Embiid is an improved playmaker. So
no,
you have
Embiid
I kind of as a ball handler.
You need like multiple. I mean, you're seeing teams play multiple like guys that can handle the ball.
So, but I say that to say this: if we're trying to match up with, and you say it's win now mode, and the 2 teams that are playing right now, one small point guard in the Knicks, right? And if I am Philly and I have to put somebody on Brunson because I don't want Tyrese on him, are you going to put Tre Johnson on him, or are you going to put Ace on him? I
don't think neither one of them are going to be able to do much. So,
I mean, that's
then
true.
I figure if Tre is Tre with a reduced role, because he had to do everything for Texas, I think he can be a better defender. I think Ace has the tools to be a good defender, was a good weak side shot blocker and rebounder, but Brunson's going to foul either one of those guys out.
But at the same time, you got to, I mean, I'm saying that to say, again, Indiana, you're going to have to, it looks like they're going to win this series. You're going to have to be built to beat Indiana, right? So you need size not because Tyrese is picking on small guards, but like, yeah, I just feel like Ace is the better fit for him, even though I do think today, in whatever day it is in May that you're listening to this, Tre Johnson is the better basketball player. I just feel like it's a better fit. I feel like Leif got something to say. Go ahead, Leif.
Well, I mean, that's my kind of overall contention, that I think Tre is more polished right now. And so in that sense, he's more able to help more teams. But I think Philadelphia is a unique situation. Like I said, I think that handcuffs Tre Johnson's ability to do what he does best and score the basketball. That puts him as a spot-up shooter and a guy who attacks closeouts. That's not exactly what I define him as, and that puts him at best at like an Emmanuel Quickley role. And that's not a slight at Emmanuel Quickley, but Tre Johnson to me is all-star potential. He's a guy who can be all-NBA maybe because he's so good with the ball in his hands, and you just don't give him the chance to be ball in hand because they're trying to win immediately. Ace, I think, I've said this for years and years, and that's why I was nodding so vigorously. I think most teams right now are trying to make their 2-guard be big. You want your point guard, your jumbo initiator, that's wonderful. But you look at some of these teams and you have a big secondary guard. Like Ace Bailey's a 6'8", 6'9", 2-guard.
Hey, he can't handle the ball like that, though.
But we don't need him to handle
But in that specific instance, you have Paul George, too. So you have Paul George to do so. You have Maxey to do so. You can play Jared McCain. And then so it just makes more sense to me to have him do that. And I think even if you were to go to Utah, let's say one of these guys goes 3, VJ goes 4, and the other goes to Utah. Do I prefer Tre Johnson? Maybe marginally, but I want to see what Ace can do as a 6'8" 2-guard at times. And you play a giant lineup, you get the defensive upside, and you let him shoot over the top of some guys, see what his bag develops into. And then if he plays off the ball and you run these pin downs that are elaborately set that were so good for Markin when he first came because he was bigger than the guys guarding him, but he was too quick for the big boys that would be chasing him. Like, I think Ace Bailey can do a lot of those similar things, and I think Philadelphia is more structured for Ace Bailey's success than Tre Johnson's.
See, I think if they would have the same role, Just one is the better shooter. And I think Tre's transition would be a little bit easier. If you're Philly and you want Ace to play the same role as a spot up shooter, then he's not a better shooter than Tre Johnson.
But you got to factor in the defensive upside, though, is what I'm saying. So
but Philly doesn't necessarily need upside right now.
Defensive upside, yeah, you
they
do,
don't need
because
defensive upside right now. They need that window is small. They need the best player that's going to help them get over the hump now. And I think Ace is not as ready to contribute right away as Tre. I asked somebody this question a couple days ago, and they brought up a good point. And I said, why is Ace considered like the better prospect than Tre? And his exact words were, because Tre has been elite for a long time. You've known about Tre being an elite scorer since he was a freshman or sophomore. He said the intrigue with Ace is because he didn't become a 5-star until his senior year. But he said that is what is making people believe. That's the thing that made people believe before the season that he could possibly pass Cooper, because he was ascending. He said because Tre has been good for so long, you expect him to do that. And with Ace, it's, oh, he's a late bloomer. Oh, well, he's shooting up. And he said it's actually helped him in a sense, but hurt him because people are more critical of him because they had higher expectations, because the media, including us, ranked him super high because he was ascending, and we've overlooked Tre, who's been the same dude, and he's gotten better as a passer. So I thought that was fair.
I mean, I've been a Tre Johnson fan for a very long time, and I just feel like if I'm Tre Johnson, send me to Utah, I'm gonna have the ball in my hands. It's the quickest way for me to get paid and be an all NBA level player, all-star, whatever. I'm going to maximize my potential. I'm going to maximize my potential in Utah versus playing the Quentin Grimes role in Philadelphia. Selfishly speaking, I want the ball in my hands. I want to be the reason why we win versus, a piece. Especially at 18 when I'm trying to get to my second contract, but I'm a selfish dude. So you
should talk to him. Just give him that piece of advice and say it's on behalf of your boy over here, because that is music to my ears. Because Bradley Beal, let's just say that it's Bradley Beal. I think he can be better than Bradley Beal. And Bradley Beal scored 30 a game in the NBA. Do I think he's an MVP like Shea? No, but I think there's a world in which he commands attention similarly and scores 25 and dishes out 6 assists. Like, that's the type of player that I want, a franchise-changing talent. And I think Ace can be a franchise-changing talent, but 76ers, I don't think either of those guys go to the 76ers and have a role that sets them up to be an all-star. Like, they would, the way they become an all-star is they get traded or they clear house and they're the asset they stay. Like, Tyrese Maxey is always going to be having the ball in those years, not to mention Embiid if healthy. And then McCain maybe has more licks at it earlier if you're Tre Johnson. At least Ace Bailey can step in and play the Michael Porter role. But at the same time, I'd rather go to Utah, and this is not because I'm a Jazz fan. I'd rather try to be a star. Like, you want to win, but you want to be the reason for winning. And like you said, there is some avarice, there is some greed that comes with that level of expectation. You want to be a guy who can have a max contract as opposed to, hey, like, okay, he scored 14 a game, he's promising. Like, there's only so many Mikal Bridges type of glow ups that you get traded, and all of a sudden you score a ton of points. But even then, Mikal Bridges has settled back into a role because his actual role is more of the defensively inclined. There's so few that can really take that leap. And I think if he gets pigeonholed into that, it takes away a lot of the ceiling that we talk about as, Ace Bailey's a moldable ball of clay. Well, you're taking away the ability to mold it in the way that allows him to reach his ceiling.
I'll end on this. And just from the people that I've talked to, everybody is like, we have no idea what Utah is going to do. They need to hit big, but then some are saying, if they don't, you got AJ DeBonta. But let's end on this one real fast. In your opinion, is VJ Edgecombe, or should VJ Edgecombe be in the mix at number 3 for Philadelphia? In my opinion, the answer is no. He's the smaller of the two guys that we mentioned. He's not the better shooter. Yes, he's the better athlete, but I just don't think that he's a fit for Philly.
No. He didn't test as a better athlete. Like Tre Johnson measured bigger, longer, and jumps just as high. I agree. Yeah. VJ plays more athletically, but if you were to look at all these things, you'd say a better basketball player all the time. I pray he goes 3. Like I would be elated. My worries would be
goes 3.
If VJ goes 3, I'll be the happiest man on the planet Earth.
Oh yeah, because you're gonna get either Tre or
I get Tre or Ace. I'm elated. That would be the best possible outcome. Morey does like athletes that are rangy, and they thinks that he can teach them to shoot the ball. I think there's a world that happens. I would not personally consider it. I've been low on VJ all year.
Well, that wraps up this episode. This was a fun one. Let us know your thoughts, not just what the consensus is saying. Give me details why you think Ace Bailey or Tre Johnson should be the number 3 pick for the Philadelphia 76ers. Once again.